Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, is the finale to the sequel trilogy and the finale to what is now known as the Skywalker Saga. This brings back J.J. Abrams as the director, and the stakes may be even higher for him this time. Here's a brief non-spoiler review. The movie is worth watching if you're at all invested in the new Star Wars movies, and it is ultimately a mostly satisfying conclusion with lots of fan service. If you hated The Last Jedi, then this should come across as good, but if you liked The Last Jedi, then I really don't know. There might be a more mixed feeling. The movie wasn't great, but it does try and is credible for doing so. Okay, now for the fun part. Let's do the spoiler talk. Spoiler warning, this review works a lot better for those who have seen the film. Alright, so Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker begins super fast-paced, bringing immediate action to the screen, and maybe this fast pace feels fun at the beginning, but then you find out that's not the end of it. Every action scene that follows then comes across as rushed and somewhat choppy. They really tried to keep this movie around 2 hours and 20 minutes after the complaints about The Last Jedi's runtime, I guess, so the pacing was off. But speaking of retconning The Last Jedi, yes, it does do that, as I certainly expected. They clear up who Snoke is, they redeem Luke even after he's dead, they sideline Rose just like George Lucas had to do with Jar Jar, and they clear up who Rey's parents actually are. Some of these things work nicely, like Snoke and Luke, but some of the other stuff doesn't. It's taken too far when you just pretend like The Last Jedi never happened, because Rose is just a useless character now, and the idea of Rey legitimately being a nobody, as told by Kylo Ren and as shown by the mirror scene, is just thrown out the window. Also, Luke's lightsaber was put back together out of nowhere, keeping the past alive instead of dead, and now the Jedi are alive without the Sith, even though Luke said that's not how the balance works and yada yada. This is where the shift in directors hurts a sequence of movies, but okay, let's move on from that. Let's talk about the characters. Rey is better now that she has an actual background and shaped out path, but the general bland way she acted in the last two movies isn't much improved, but generally speaking, I think she still had a pretty satisfying conclusion here. The Palpatine twist did work for this movie, and I liked that. Finn has this new character to bounce off of, and he's just force sensitive out of nowhere now, so like, okay. Poe also has a new character to bounce off of, but I at least liked his character better than Finn, and him finally being put in the general position was done well. Chewbacca grieves, man, and it's powerful, and you even grieve for Chewie, so A+. Then I think it was very wise to include C-3PO as a main character again. He was the proper comic relief and spice of an OG trilogy character that this trilogy needed. Now, if only R2 had more screen time, especially considering the new droid Dio was forced and pointless. The scenes with Leia towards the beginning were slightly awkward, and I really can't tell how well their old footage of her was meant to work into this movie, but it's obvious to me that she was probably meant to do more or say more in the scenes she was in, so that's a shame. And then her death scene was inevitable, though nicely done. I just wish the fast pace of the movie didn't make it feel as brief as it was. Kylo Ren was cool to see finally take the path of the Jedi. The whole recreation of the scene with Han was really powerful, so that was total fan service, but I love it. General Hux is a traitor now, so okay, and there's a new guy who took his place who's at least slightly more intimidating than Hux, but I mean, that was just okay. Oh hey, the Knights of Ren were in it too. They were really hyped up ever since The Force Awakens, and honestly, they're just around to look intimidating. They were really undeveloped, kind of disappointing. Fan service was given all over the place, with the best nostalgic experience of the whole new trilogy. We finally find out Leia did train as a Jedi, Luke finally lifts the X-Wing himself, and come on, what's most important is Chewie finally gets a medal. And even the fangirls get what they want when #Reylo becomes real. The best point of nostalgia may come from the music. The soundtrack of this film is truly outstanding. I feel like every movie of the sequel trilogy has had less and less entirely new tracks created, but this movie has the greatest sounds of compiled loads of tracks that were used so perfectly in all the right places of the movie. John Williams really deserves some credit for making this movie seem better than it possibly is, just thanks to his score. So thanks to that, we got a tribute to the entire saga, but there's obviously much more, like the idea that this was all Palpatine's greater plan all along, and we get to hear the voice of pretty much every Jedi who's ever spoken, which is, again, fan service, but really neat. Now, this movie takes a pretty classic path of adventure in the beginning and has a generally good plot. All the characters who are just like, oh yeah, I'm coming because I'm a main character is kinda lame, but at least their adventure was decently engaging. And then the moments leading up to the final act was probably my favorite part of the film. Sure, it's a little overdone to make the Force ghost of someone show up every time a character loses their way and needs some advice to make everything go perfectly afterwards, but I still really enjoyed that nonetheless. Then, the final act fact happens. First off, can I just say that the scope of this movie really replicates that of Avengers Endgame? I just think that's a really fair statement to say. But anyways, we have a bajillion ships come out of nowhere, but then you barely see some actual quality ship action. Compare the scales of the two, and yet I'd still say episode 4 has better ship action in its finale. And then everything that goes down with Palpatine is just really basic blockbuster CGI finale stuff with beams shooting everywhere and you keep switching back and forth between who's in the lead, and then there's just a big boom to end everything. Then you think the main character is dead, etc, etc. I'm not particularly fond of them for doing that, but it is what it is. Then you get a nice happy ending, and the final scene is pretty close to perfect. But this is the end of the saga here, and there are still many loose open ends, lots of unanswered questions, and I don't want there to be a whole additional trilogy anytime soon, so what the heck. Also, this movie really expands on our knowledge of force powers in some ways that are questionable, but let's just say it works, cause sure, okay, this movie is okay. I'll say I like it, it's not bad, but it could have been better. It's a whole newly formed meaning of what's a Star Wars experience in a movie, which I find is interesting, so that's where I'm gonna end this review. Check out Rotten Tomatoes. This is a complete flip from The Last Jedi. Now the critics hate it, the audience loves it, but that's really interesting to me actually. So if you haven't already, be sure to check out all of my other Star Wars movie reviews on the channel as I cover the entire saga. I'd also love to hear what you guys thought of this movie down in the comments below. Alright, so that all being said, thank you very much for watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for lots more videos coming real soon. Bye! Okay, but like them introducing Palpatine, didn't that kind of make it seem like J.J. Abrams thought they were just running out of characters since they already killed off Snoke? I mean, what, are they stupid here? Clearly, they just completely forgot about the most crucial character who really would have easily have been said to have been behind all of this, the entire Skywalker saga, and that's obviously Jar Jar, Darth Jar Jar. Tell me I'm not alone on that, come on.